Imagine a prison, not just any prison, but a sprawling complex designed to hold 40,000 souls. This is no ordinary penitentiary, it's a fortress of concrete and steel, a monument to El Salvador's war on crime. This is SECO. Opened in 2023, SECO is President Nayib Bukele's answer to the nation's rampant gang violence. It's a place where hope goes to die, where the sun is a distant memory. Inside SECO, life is harsh. Inmates are crammed into overcrowded cells, often exceeding 80 to a room. They sleep on metal bunks, stacked high with barely enough space to breathe. The air is thick with the stench of sweat and despair. The heat is oppressive, temperatures soaring to a stifling 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The prisoners spend their days in near total confinement, allowed out of their cells for a mere 30 minutes of exercise. The rest of the time is spent locked away, their movements monitored by a network of cameras. Human rights groups have denounced the conditions at SECO, calling it inhumane and degrading. Critics argue that the prison's harsh conditions amount to torture, violating international law. Nayib Bukele, El Salvador's young and charismatic president, has staked his reputation on crushing the nation's notorious gangs. Elected on a wave of popular support, Bukele promised to restore order to a country ravaged by violence. His weapon of choice? An iron fist. Bukele's crackdown on crime has been swift and brutal. He's implemented a state of emergency, granting security forces sweeping powers to arrest and detain suspected gang members. The president's hardline approach has yielded results. Homicides have plummeted, and the streets of San Salvador are noticeably safer. Bukele's approval ratings remain sky-high, with many Salvadorans praising his decisive action. But his methods have also drawn sharp criticism from human rights groups, who accuse him of authoritarianism and trampling on civil liberties. His supporters argue that desperate times call for desperate measures. They say that Bukele is doing what's necessary to restore law and order to a country held hostage by gangs for too long. His critics, however, fear that Bukele's iron fist is eroding democratic norms and creating a climate of fear. In a move that sent shockwaves through the international community, President Bukele recently announced a controversial deal with the United States. Under the agreement, El Salvador would accept deported individuals from the U.S., including convicted criminals. This includes not only Salvadoran nationals but also U.S. citizens and legal residents. The deal has sparked outrage among human rights advocates, who argue that it violates international law. They contend that the U.S. has a responsibility to its own citizens, regardless of their crimes. Deporting them to a country with a questionable human rights record, they argue, is a dereliction of that duty. Furthermore, the legality of deporting U.S. citizens to serve sentences abroad is murky at best. While naturalized citizens can be stripped of their citizenship under certain circumstances, deporting natural-born citizens to foreign prisons is unprecedented. Critics argue that such a move would set a dangerous precedent, potentially paving the way for the U.S. to outsource its justice system to countries with weaker human rights protections. Bukele's willingness to accept U.S. deportees is a shrewd political gamble. By aligning himself with the U.S. on a sensitive issue, he strengthens his position on the world stage and secures much-needed aid and investment. The move also plays well domestically, bolstering his image as a strong leader who isn't afraid to stand up to the U.S. However, the long-term implications of this deal remain to be seen. The influx of U.S. deportees, many of whom are hardened criminals, could exacerbate El Salvador's already dire prison overcrowding problem. Moreover, the deal risks further straining relations between the U.S. and El Salvador, particularly if human rights abuses at SECO continue. Bukele's controversial agreement with the U.S. is a high-stakes gamble, one that could have far-reaching consequences for both countries. It remains to be seen whether this bold move will ultimately strengthen his grip on power or backfire, plunging El Salvador deeper into crisis.